Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
That was it.
Yeah, it's good to hear what you bring. This is kind of the A game.
If this is the A game, sad times are these.
Have you heard? Have you heard of this? You don't use a Mac, and that makes me sad.
No.
But there's a new app for screenwriters called Slugline. Have you heard of this thing?
I have.
You have?
Yeah, is that the one that our buddy was putting together? No, never mind. That's
Stu Maschwitz and John August.
Yeah, that is the one. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
that
Well,
is the one.
their frustration with and Stu Mashwitz has been. I mean, he was on the visual effects team for Star Wars: A New Hope. Like, he's been around for a long, long time. And he's also a coder and a nerd, and he's fantastic to follow on Twitter. You can find him at 5TU if you want to follow Stu Mashwitz. And John August, he did Big Fish. We like him.
We rip on him aplenty.
There is some ripping, but generally, I think I'm more in his corner than you are.
Well, he's written one movie that's worth talking about. Somewhat.
Well, back to my story. Back to my time.
Sorry.
No, it's serious. So this, so seriously, folks. This John August, if you haven't heard of him, Big Fish. He and Stu Mashwitz. He actually came up with this fountain, which is a textual style for writing screenplays that is based foundationally on Markdown, which is a fantastic syntax for writing HTML in plain text, human readable, without having to know the code. It's really great. I'm a huge fan of Markdown. And so he took this idea of Markdown where you can just type and be able to read it and then process it, run it through this processor and create beautiful styled compliant HTML. And he said, we could do the same thing for screenplays. And so he created this fountain text processor, and Stu Mashwitz and his team came together and they said, we could actually make an application out of this, not just a text processor. And so they call it Slugline. It's available in the Mac App Store, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful and seems really, really smart. It seems, they get rid of essentially all the buttons and allow you to create based on, just some very simple and memorable, conventions that you would know if you're writing a screenplay. You just write in text and it automatically handles all the formatting for you and outputs a sort of industry standard first draft that you can then take and import into Final Draft to do the production drafts, the shooting drafts of the script. And I have been really sort of lusting over it. I think it's quite beautiful, and it makes me wish that you used a Mac because it's based on a simple text file. It's super easy to sync using Dropbox or whatever, and I think it opens the door for some really great collaboration. And it's very cheap. How much is Final Draft? It's like $9 million now, I think, for a single user license.
It's not that much.
It's maybe $9.5,
maybe $8
million, and this is like $40. And it's super. So if you are a Mac screenwriter, you should check it out. It's really cool. And you should also generally check out Markdown because it's great. I use the heck out of it.
The more time John August spends on developing better screenwriting software is only going to benefit everybody because he's churning out less bad scripts.
Do you know what I forgot to tell you? He's going to be our guest on the show next week.
Oh, fantastic. Well, good. I can tell him what I think right to his face.
Good grief. Buzzkill. Look at you.
No, but that is exciting.
It is very exciting. And it's Markdown in general is something everybody should learn. It's so everybody already knows it. That's the thing. It's a guerrilla writing. You already know it. You don't even know that you know it.
I apparently do, and I don't even know it yet.
I know. All right.
Wow.
What are we doing? What are we doing? That was a plug for, but it was related to film, right? But it was a plug. It just shows you what's on my mind.
Screenwriting.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts.
It sure enough is. What are we doing? This is the next reel, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about movies and spoil them heavily for you. You can find us at thenextreel.com. And did you see I added a new button?
Absolutely.
You did not. You're lying because I hear you typing.
I'm going right now. What is this new button?
Check the new button. See if you can discover it. The new button is a little bit premature because we aren't quite to this number yet, but we have a new button there. If you want to see all the movies that we have done and our ranking, you can head over there and you'll see a brand fancy new button, the Next Reel Top 100 over at Flickchart. And why is it premature? Because I think we've only ranked, 87?
Yeah, we're not at
100 yet, but eventually we're going to get there. And so you can see our top 87 with my little white lie that We're actually at 100.
Eventually, it'll be 100.
That's right. And so you can check out all the movies that we've done in our ranking. And now, speaking of number one, currently ranked number one, heavyweight champion of the world, Paddy Chayefsky's Network. And we're going to see if we can overthrow that tonight.
We'll see.
Cool. It's going to be Paddy Chayefsky against Paddy Chayefsky tonight.
That's right.
And so find us at thenextreel.com, check out the blog over there, and then you can go over to Facebook and like us over there too. That's where the conversation's happening, over at facebook.com/thenextreel. And you can comment, join us, like us, and then finally subscribe to us. Head over to iTunes, search for us in iTunes at The Next Reel, and you can subscribe so you don't miss a single episode of podcasty goodness. And you can see right on the website, you can subscribe with RSS audio if you use your own, if you roll your own podcast client, or iTunes audio will take you right to the iTunes store. And we sure appreciate it if you do that. What else did I miss?
I think you hit all of it, man.
All right. We're going to talk about some trailers. It's a big trailer week.
There were quite a few good ones, yes, indeed.
What lit you up this week? What did you get excited about?
Well, the one that really got me excited was the Captain Phillips trailer.
Because on the merits, or because it's a Tom Hanks movie and that's just what happens to you?
Okay, on both. Yes, I am a little nutty for Tom Hanks, except for when he does things like Larry Crown. But I love Tom Hanks, and I think he's fantastic. And Captain Phillips looks great, but also because it's Paul Greengrass's latest film. And, we've talked about him quite a number of times on our show before. And I think he brings a lot to the table. And this is a very exciting story. This is an action thriller where Tom Hanks plays Captain Phillips, the real-life captain of the ship that back in 2009 was hijacked by Somali pirates off the coast of Africa. It looks gripping. It looks very exciting, and I am quite looking forward to seeing this. It opens in October, and it's not going to come fast enough for me.
Yeah, I think it does. It looks really good. I'm excited about it. It's exciting. I particularly, I love Tom Hanks when when he gets all serious. I think he's a compelling actor to watch. But the one that really struck me was the sort of lead Somali.
Yeah, right.
I just even watching this trailer, I found myself riveted by the way he engaged Tom Hanks on the bridge of that ship.
Well, and I like that they cast somebody who does not look like Denzel Washington as the Somali pirate. This is a guy who they look like they plucked a guy out of the Somali pirate lineup.
Exactly.
And said, okay, you're going to play the pirate. I mean, that's a terrible thing to say. I'm sure he's a wonderful actor.
That's right. That's a little bit. I think you just offended people. Some people are offended by you right now.
Some people are probably offended by,
yet it's true.
It's only because they did an amazing job with the hair and makeup.
He is stunningly well cast. The entire sort of pirate army stunningly well cast. It's like straight off a newsreel. I felt like I was nervous for the people on this boat.
Yeah.
All they had was fire hoses and slingshots.
It's like the worst defense. I couldn't believe it. It's just like,
and
okay,
gets on the radio. It's just
turn your hoses on.
That's right. You better turn your hoses on. Hoses?
That's it. Oh man.
Although you have to admit, they have some serious hoses on that ship.
Yeah, I thought I was picturing guys,
like a hose.
Like spraying these guys with a hose,
like a sprinkler hose with the little pinhole in it, pinholes in it.
These are some serious hoses.
I'm gonna drip irrigate all over you.
So anyway,
very much
that's Captain Phillips. Yeah.
All right. I'm totally serious on this one. I'm doing The Butler. You've seen the trailer for The Butler?
I've seen the trailer. Yeah,
this looks good. I don't know what I'm more excited. So, The Butler is we've got this is what's his name? It's Forrest Whitaker. Plays a White House buzz based on a true story. A article written by Will Haygood. Screenplay by the Precious guys, Lee Daniels and Danny Strong. And it follows the life of this real life butler over the course of 8 presidents in the White House, and it looks to me the same sort of kind of tone and tenor of the movie that I wanted 42 to be.
Yeah.
Like the expectation of the way they use this character to tell the story of race over the course now of generations, and I think that is I think it looks great. Oprah Winfrey's in it, and so it'll undoubtedly do well.
But really, who's not in it?
That was what I was going to say. I mean, this is if there ever was a film that was star-studded, this is the one. John Cusack, Robin Williams, Terrence Howard, James Marsden, Alan Rickman, Liev Schreiber, Forrest Whitaker, Melissa Leo, Minka Kelly, Jane Fonda, Cuba Gooding Jr., Vanessa Redgrave, Mariah Carey, David Oyelowo, Lenny Kravitz, Oprah Winfrey, Nealon Ellis. It's just on and on and on and on this film. So
well, and the thing that I love to see reading the cast list is not just who's in it, but you have John Cusack as Richard Nixon, Robin Williams as Dwight Eisenhower, James Marsden as JFK, Alan Rickman as Ronald Reagan, Liev Schreiber as Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yes,
it's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy.
Totally. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it really does. Looks like it's going to be a strong film, and probably something that I'm sure they're hoping people are talking about come award season.
Yes.
And from the looks of the trailer, it very well will be.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a big one. And so, given that, and now that we've done each of our trailers, I have to also mention that this was also the week that that other one that I like so much came out. Ender's Game came out, and it looks like exactly the movie I expected it to be. Taking a small child and making him seem like an adult soldier in a space war.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited about it.
I am too. I'm tempering myself because as unexcited as I am about the author, and as much as he just drives me crazy, I'm trying to put that aside and focus on it, much like I do the Outlaw Josie Wales. I don't think about the author as the KKK man. I think about the filmmakers and the people who came together to make the film a great film. I'm trying to think about that when I think about Ender's Game.
I think that's good for you.
Because I want to see it. I guess that's what it boils down to. The other trailer that I just have to throw out because I'm super excited, and inevitably, I think we're probably going to have to talk about it, is The World's End.
Did I see this trailer yet?
I don't know. I emailed you a note. I told you.
Now wait just a minute. The World's End. This is a Simon Pegg, Nick Frost. This is this is the thing.
This is the inevitable part 3 of the 3 Flavor Cornetto trilogy. That's right.
God, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought of a different movie. I thought I'd already seen this trailer, and I have not.
Oh well, you'll have to watch it later.
I look forward to this one too.
I know.
Martin Freeman is getting around, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Once you're a Hobbit, everybody wants you.
Okay, now we have to do a quick mini review because I think both of us have come to terms with our Friday movie experience, and I very much would like to know what you thought of Iron Man 3.
I liked it. I liked it. I didn't get emotionally involved with it. I find this with a lot of these Marvel films. I really enjoy it. I think Shane Black is a smart filmmaker. I enjoy how he makes his films, how the structure, just the way he plays with the script breaks a lot of conventions. I never really got engrossed. Certain elements that happen later in the film didn't, trigger that emotional funny bone and make me emotionally vested in the characters. But I still walked out of there enjoying it. So that's my feeling of it.
I did too. As we were texting after I saw the movie, I realized I was having a hard time sort of ranking it, because that's always your first kind of instinct is to rank it next to the other two, and in all of the Iron Man sort of properties. And I had such a hard time because I knew something of the Extremis storyline, and I have already been I'm already pretty familiar with how they have butchered up the elements from the comic to create this new cinematic universe, and I had some trouble with that in the first one. I sort of let it go in the second one, and this one surprised me. I think what he chose to do with this one was particularly jarring. The way he sort of the changes he made to the particularly to the cast of evildoers.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of want to dance around that because it's still so new. It is it's not what I expected. The twist at the end was not what I expected. What I expected them to do with the characters, and it's grown on me. I think mostly to the credit of the great Sir Ben Kingsley. He's just a treat to watch in this context.
Yeah,
and so I really enjoyed that. I always, I really love the entire cast. I think they all did a fantastic job, and this was certainly a spectacle in terms of just the visual effects of those suits.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a roller coaster. That sequence at the end on the ship rigging was unreal.
Yeah,
the complexity of that. It was a real ride, and I enjoyed I enjoyed it all the way through. I still think the second one might be my favorite.
Yeah, which I think you're just crazy because the second one, I think I don't know.
It's not like you hate the second one, right?
I probably wouldn't watch it again. I just walked out of there going, God, that was garbage. I really hated the second one. I don't understand why people like it so much. I think it was just a terrible film. But
Mickey Rourke, man, he did great.
He was fine as the character, but overall the film just didn't work.
All right, I'm going to watch it again. See if I can muster that same level of hate for it that you have. I'm going to work up to that.
There you go. The one thing I will say about Iron Man 3 is people have to stop casting Guy Pearce if he has to appear much younger or if he has to appear much older. I don't buy him as a 90-some-year-old guy in Prometheus, and I don't buy him as a pimply-faced college kid. He looks great for his age, but he doesn't work well when you're pushing him to extremes.
God, you are so right. I don't know why they felt the need to fully Igor him in the opening sequence, but I didn't find it as repellent as his performance in Prometheus, but just the makeup in Prometheus, but this was just really silly.
It was.
Overall,
luckily that was only like 5 minutes. Of the film,
right,
so.
Right. Overall, great film. They opened with Blue
Dabba-Dee,
which as I told you, I thought I was in the wrong theater. That song totally threw me out of context. And if you see it, you got to stay all the way to the end, not for the after credits bit, which there is. Which is, it's fine. It's funny. But for the closing credit run is complete, full-on Hawaii 5-0. And I thought it was great. I love the way Shane Black shakes up the shakes up things. It was very fun. Go see that movie. Totally worth it. All right. So what else do you want to talk about?
Speaking of good writers,
shall we?
I guess we're talking about Paddy.
I'm excited about this. What did you think of it? Now you said you hadn't seen this film, right?
I had seen like the first 20 or 30 minutes. That's all I had ever watched of this film before. Mm-hmm. Not for any particular reason, like I thought it was awful or anything. I just got caught up in something else and just never ended up coming back to it. I like it. I don't like it as much as Network. If anything, this almost seems like training ground for Network. Mm-hmm. Like moving into kind of finding the right pattern for the great satire that he had going on in Network. This one, I think it has a great tone most of the time, and there's a few times where it kind of hiccups and it kind of goes in directions that I don't quite understand why it needs to go in those directions. But that's okay because I still found the characters immensely engrossing. I found their dialogue really enjoyable. Just listening to Paddy Chayefsky's dialogue that he puts in people's mouths, particularly their lengthy monologues, which he really does enjoy. I love listening to that. And for that reason alone, I think this film is definitely worth checking out.
I absolutely agree with you. I was trying to figure out how, the best way to characterize my feeling of this film, and it comes down to this. I really love the first 70 minutes of this film.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's that sort of parenthetical that there is. I feel like I'm riding with him. I'm loving the dialogue. I don't find any of the individual characters in this film all that compelling. Even George C. Scott, I think, is as our lead doctor is. Kind of a dotard in this film. I'm not really attracted to his struggles. But what I love, I think, the most about this film is the environment that they set up and capitalize on in this hospital. The chaos, the activity that they set up in and around the scenes that we're watching. I mean, it's almost more entertaining to watch what's going on behind the action than the action itself. And then, to me, it falls apart in the end, and we can talk more about that in a bit.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right on track with kind of the feelings I have for it. The beginning of it I loved, and that's what I remembered of this movie from the 30 or so minutes of it that I had seen.
Well, can you walk through it? Just walk through what the film is about, because I have a feeling people are going to be, if you have, I doubt that most people have seen this movie. I'm going to say that.
No, and it's not super easy to find. Amazon does have it streaming. Other than that, Netflix does not have it.
iTunes has it.
iTunes has it, yeah. But if you have Prime, Amazon, it's free. So
yep.
That's fantastic. It's the story of a hospital where really not a lot is going right. This is definitely a hospital you do not want to check into. There's protesters outside protesting the fact that the hospital has bought a building next door that was condemned. They're going to turn it into, I don't know, some other sort of assisted living sort of place. And the residents there, who for whatever reason, even though it's been condemned, they are protesting the hospital.
I think I think that was actually the Ecumenical Liberation Organization.
Right, exactly.
They just evicted them out of their homes, and that's how they got so mad.
That's right.
Came back in network.
That's right. So in this hospital, things just go wrong because pretty much any of the people working there, doctors, nurses, just don't seem to really be paying that close attention to people, to the diagnostic, tests that are coming back from people. Right from the beginning of the film, we hear narration, which coincidentally is narrated by Paddy Chayefsky, talking about this character who comes in. His name is, I'm going to have to look it up here, but he comes in for emphysema. They misdiagnose him, and they start treating him for the wrong things, and he ends up dying. It was Guernsey is this character's name. Mm-hmm. And you hear this story all in context of how this bed ended up getting vacated because a doctor then proceeds to use it for some late night coital activity with one of the nurses. And so this is the sort of thing going on. And then that doctor, the next morning, a nurse comes in and she finds a body in the bed and she checks it and it's dead, and it happens to be that doctor. So people keep ending up dead, like doctors and nurses keep ending up dead throughout the film. George C. Scott, he's the head of this hospital I don't know. He's the
chief of surgery.
Chief of surgery. Medicine, thank you. I don't watch doctor shows. I'm not a doctor person. So I just like that. I try to avoid all of that. But yes, he's the chief of surgery. He's the head of all this. He is suicidal. He is drinking a lot. He is living in a hotel room, I believe, because his wife had kicked him out, or he had left. They had kicked their kids out. He's not in touch with any of them. He's pretty miserable. He doesn't like his work anymore. Not a happy guy. And so that's kind of the setup of the film. We have him now trying to deal with all the messes that are happening in the hospital and everything that's going on. Plus, then now we have Diana Rigg, whose father is in a coma in the bed next to the one where this guy had died, and she comes to visit her father with a Native American guy who starts chanting prayers over the father and all this stuff, because they all live on this reservation out in Mexico, and so it's that sort of crazy sort of hospital where just wacky things are happening, and in all of that you get these amazing characters.
Yeah, and you get sort of. I mean, I think the first half hour really invests in the satire that Chayefsky was demonstrating, which is all about the state of medicine, right? Through the general clumsiness of the environment in this hospital, as you say, the just obliviousness of who's who, which patients are in which beds, in which rooms, in which operating theater. It's all framed by the constant din of the finance people asking for the Blue Cross Blue Shield account numbers so that they can pay for these services. And he paints this picture that really hit me sideways, that we have, this is, I don't know whether Chayefsky was, painting a picture of what will be or really what was at the time. I was, too young at the time to know, but I think I generally have this feeling that we've been struggling with healthcare, for the most of my lifetime, and and that maybe it's a much more sort of recent occurrence that healthcare is such a major issue. But what this film really paints this picture, the satire paints this picture that we've been dealing with this for over 40 years. And clearly, if it gets to the point that Chayefsky is satirizing the heinousness of the hospital system, we were already at a pretty dark point, and that I think was a real lesson to me, more historically than cinematically, of the picture he was painting of the medical culture in this country.
Well, I think that was a big thing, and that was the first thing I thought watching the movie is thank my lucky stars that I did not have to go through a hospital system back in the late 60s, early 70s. Because what a frightening place that was.
Right.
I mean, my sense was we're probably better off than they were then, because at least we kind of have computerized systems. They seem to have at least that sort of stuff organized better. Sure, our system is still a major mess for a lot of other reasons.
Yeah, we've solved a lot of problems, but things are still very messy.
Yeah, but I mean, the problems they're specifically addressing in this film, like misdiagnosis, apathy about the diagnoses, patients laying in a room so long that the doctors just aren't even checking them and unaware that a person's just dead in the corner.
Which I think is such a great point in this film, and that's repeated. That's the one gift of the last act is these patients died because they were forgotten to death.
Yeah,
and that is a killer line. I mean, it's just killer refrain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and that's kind of what he's saying about the system. From what I was reading, he was actually partially inspired to write this script on attacking institutionalized medicine after his wife, she had an experience at a hospital. She was suffering from a neurological disorder, and they had a really unhappy experience dealing with incompetent staff. Just the people in the hospital didn't know what they were doing. They were apathetic. He was so frustrated with the system, and that's what really kind of brought this script forward. And he got so much negative flack from this script and from everybody after the fact that he actually, I can't remember what happened. I think he developed some sort of cancer later in his life in late 70s, early 80s. I think it was from his smoking habit. He was afraid to go to the hospital to see any doctors about it because he was still afraid that they were going to treat him poorly purposefully because of this film, or just because he felt that this was really how they were. They were just so bad that and he ended up just dying from his cancer. So,
man, talking about laying in the bed you made.
That's right.
Huh?
Oh, Paddy.
So, okay. So the things that it's funny when you start looking at the patterns of the films that Chayefsky writes. It seems like there are sort of two character classes that he's writing. There are those who are totally sort of oblivious to their current state, right? When you look at network. You have the network executives that are just going about their business because they're making money, and that's the system that they're in. You have the hospital administrators that are just looking to keep the hospital walls up, and that this is the system that exists, so they're going to deal with it. So there's a sort of cast that is the moral oblivious, and the other cast of characters, those who have worked hard to get where they are, lost everything, are deeply frustrated, depressed, suicidal, and white and male. And now we've painted. I really like the way you characterize George C. Scott, or characterize this film as a work in progress leading to Network, because I think George C. Scott, in every other way, reads to me like a work in progress for Howard Beale.
Yeah, he does. Although, that being said, not to belittle George C. Scott's character or his performance in this film, because I really like George C. Scott, and I think he's strong in this film. And his scene when he's sitting with Diana Rigg in his office and they're talking, and he's kind of going on about his impotency and everything, and because she had been flirting with him and all that.
Right. So you're talking about there. This was the late at night.
This was the late at night scene.
He offers her a drink, and they start getting conversationally intimate.
Yes, right. She starts flirting with him because she likes older guys. He says, "Don't bother, I'm impotent." And then it goes on into a much larger scale conversation about, his impotence in his life, not just, sexually impotent, but just kind of what it means. And there's so much emotion and power in that scene. It was just gripping. And that's what I mean when Paddy Chayefsky has these amazing monologues for these characters, where the actor really just gets to get in there, and they really get to be that character and be that part. And George C. Scott, he played it so well. Like the whole time, he really felt like a guy who was depressed, who was suicidal, and who was on the brink. And I think it worked so well seeing that scene played by him. I really liked that. And it is an interesting comparison with Howard Beale's character, or with the character of Howard Beale. But at the same time, I think it's different in interesting ways. It's not a person who's necessarily gone mad. This is just a person who really has just kind of hit this pit where he feels like there's nothing anymore. He's impotent in his career. He just doesn't find drive. He doesn't feel like they're doing anything. And it was a powerful scene, a powerful performance, powerful writing.
Yeah, I agree. I think George C. Scott, he's
a big actor.
Yes, he's a big actor. I was going to say he was strongest when he was chewing people out. When he's chewing out the head nurse, when he's chewing, about where did they get their training in Dachau. There are these great zinger lines, and he's so great at dealing with them. And I think he does a good depressed middle-aged man.
Yeah.
He at the time likely was channeling some pretty natural emotions.
Yeah, and he was. At that time he was an alcoholic, and he was drinking. I think from what I read, I think he was actually drinking on set, and it ended up really helping. I shouldn't say helping his performance, but it made his
thank you, Mr. Scott,
feel more natural, I guess.
The ultimate method. It's just. I think my problem with George C. Scott, with the character of Dr. Bach, is more in the script than the performance. It's this whole idea that he moved through these emotions, that his reaction to Barbara Drummond from sort of zero to lovelorn was so fast.
Yeah.
And when we hit the Scooby-Doo ending,
right.
I felt like it just was not an earned relationship. It was not an earned relationship. This was a procedural film. This was a caper film. This was a satire. And dealing with his depression, moving into this love-lust relationship was not, it just was not, practiced.
It wasn't where the film should have gone.
No, it was out of left field.
Well, yeah, that relationship. And then the bit at the end. I don't mind the bit at the end so much, kind of what you're calling the Scooby-Doo ending. It's just, I liked what he was saying, by it, but it just all came across in the most just, I don't know, plotting way that just felt like, ugh, God, the filmmaking and everything about it. And maybe it was Arthur Hiller's direction. I don't know. I haven't read the script, but it felt just kind of cloy. And I was just not very interested once we started getting flashbacks of, oh, this is what really happened.
And you know what was so disappointing about that for me was that I felt like that's why I really zero in on the first 70 minutes. At that 70-minute mark is when Drummond himself, played by Barnard Hughes, stands up, and we realize he's not in a coma, he's not on death's door, that he's actually been channeling the voice of God, and that he is the great redeemer, and he's going around not directly killing people, but putting them in a place such that the hospital would kill them on his behalf.
Right.
Yeah. And the way that is exposed, first of all, I didn't think the film needed it. I thought it had a deep and kind of satisfying patter of watching these important people get churned up and killed.
Absolutely.
By this hospital system that was, the satire was that the hospital itself was capable of destroying the people that came in completely, to be healed, trusting and to be and healthy,
right.
And they just got worse. And that was an interesting enough story. And then Drummond stands up and starts doing this channeling bit, and it really, that's the Scooby-Doo bit for me.
Saying things like, I am the fool for Christ and the paraclete of Caborca.
Yeah, and they kept saying the Caborca thing over and over again. It just becomes, it was a lead balloon for me. And I think that's a lot of the reception of the film was, at the time, I think was fairly similar, that it went in this crazy direction at the end and gave up a lot of the emotional tie that it had earned in the first half of the film.
Yeah. I agree. It's bizarre. It kind of goes off on a strange tangent that doesn't really make any sense. And it does seem to take some of the steam away from the really interesting satirical look at a hospital that's meant to be healing people that is, like he says, it's killing people through forgetfulness. They're forgetting these people and not paying attention to things that are obvious, and people are dying because of it.
Right.
If he had used that as the satire and continued that throughout, it would have ended up making a stronger film, I think.
And I think the other piece, going back to Dr. Bach's character, I think we have a couple of mentions of the fact that he's had suicidal tendencies, and yet I think that was ultimately kind of not a realized plot point. Like he was sad.
I thought that I bought into that suicidal bit, and maybe it's only because of that one scene that I had already brought up with him and Barbara when they're in his office and when he's about to shoot up with potassium and just kill himself, something that he had talked about earlier with the hospital shrink. It's just, I think the performance of George C. Scott in that scene leading up to that, it's silence, just watching him as he's just getting ready to do it. I really bought into his despair and bottoming out. And it's interesting that the conversation that he has with her about being impotent and everything is really the thing that kind of leads him to this point where he's like, yeah, I'm finally going to do it. I'm done. I feel this, I'm so impotent and everything. And then as he's about to do it, she comes back in, realizing that he may not have been joking about saying he was suicidal, and essentially stops him. And he's so angry with her that he rapes her and basically becoming non-impotent anymore. He finally breaks through that. So it's interesting that, she comes in both times. Once it drives him to near suicide, and the second time it drives him to life again. And, I can see in that maybe why a character would mistakenly think that he had now fallen in love with somebody. I can maybe buy into that, although it's one of those sorts of emotional moments. I think the emotions are so high that it's probably, and that's probably why he makes the decision at the end, I really have to stay here. I can't go running off to Mexico to live on the reservation with you. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I think about that sequence, and And when you look at that sequence in isolation, I think it's I think you're right, and I think as a short kind of character study of the impotence of the depressed middle-aged man, there may be something there. In the context of the film about the healthcare debate, I didn't need. He was already like his reaction to just being in this hospital system was enough.
Yeah.
Right. And going down that road, I felt like was a distraction to me. There were just this was a film of fantastic language and just beautiful words coming out of great mouths, and an overall story arc that was just full of distraction for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You want to talk about some of the cast highlights?
Yeah, there are.
Because everybody was in this movie?
Yeah. I mean, Richard Dysart, who we've talked about before in The Thing, who's just always fantastic. He pops in as Dr. Welbeck, another doctor who George C. Scott's character is kind of against because he had been sloppily ended up killing somebody, as I recall, right?
Well,
or messing somebody's case up.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting about Welbeck's character was that this was a doctor who was a profiteer. And he came in, he had attachment to the hospital, so he was able to come in and do surgery. But he came in, he also developed a call service that he was selling out to other doctors. He had, he had products that were being traded openly on the market. He had companies that were, publicly traded, and all in the medical profession or in the medical field. And so he was the epitome of conflict of interest. And right. I found that it was interesting in a film that is about sort of prognostication of the future of the healthcare industry. Let's show how disastrous it is now and how disastrous it'll become. Dr. Welbeck's character really is the representation of what is to come. And at the end, Dr. Welbeck ends up falling, but not just dying as part of the overall Kaborka plan. But he ends up being extorted by his partner, and he ends up dying broke, which I thought was an interesting kind of reflection. I don't know if that was if that was I don't know. It sort of played counter to the satire to me.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure where they were going with that. It was an interesting bit with his character and how they were making him out to be, and how he ended. At the end of the film.
In the locker room, they had everybody was like asking him questions about how to manage their money, and he was being set up as the sort of the Messiah.
Right. Yeah, and in that sense, I mean, it's comical in a way how he does his character does end up getting resolved in the film, but at the same time, I felt like there could have been a little more with him. But that being said, I mean, I don't know. It was still an interesting character. I still enjoyed it.
No, I agree. But I think when you say there could be more with him, that's an example of one of those trade-offs for me that I found distracting. That was a point that I did want to see more of in exchange for less of the gooey stuff.
Kaborka.
Yeah.
The Kaborka stuff, right? George C. Scott, of course, is fantastic in this. He'd been around forever. Fantastic actor who actually had just won the Oscar the year before. And I think he had refused to accept the nomination and the award for Patton because he didn't feel himself to be in competition with the other actors. The producer had accepted on his behalf and all that stuff, but he had no problem appearing the following year when he was nominated for Best Actor in the Hospital. He did a great job in this film, of course, but he lost out to Gene Hackman from The French Connection.
Yeah. What do you think? Was that deserved? Do you think Hackman deserved it over Scott?
I don't know. I have such a place in my heart for French Connection. I think that Gene Hackman did great. Now, I didn't see Sunday Bloody Sunday with Peter Finch, who we know is great. I haven't seen Koch with Walter Matthau. I definitely would have picked The Hospital, George C. Scott, or Gene Hackman over Topol from Fiddler on the Roof, as much as I enjoy that film. But to me, it's like, okay, but these other guys have a little more power in their performance.
Okay, so Richard Dysart, we talked about George C. Scott, Barnard Hughes.
Barnard Hughes, yeah.
who is fantastic as a fantastic character actor. He's been in a ton of stuff.
He's one of those guys that you just see in everything. I mean, geez, he's been acting. He was in Tron. He was in Lost Boys. He was in Midnight Cowboy. I mean,
he's got that such a distinctive voice.
Yeah,
he's tough to miss.
Acting from the 50s all the way through 2000. So a man who has been around. Just one of those great faces, and with a really fantastic full name, Barnard Aloysius Kiernan Hughes.
Oh, awesome.
That's great. Diana Rigg, we have to mention her, who's fantastic in this. Well, I won't say she's fantastic in this. She's always fantastic to look at, I think, is Diana Rigg. She's, what can I say? I mean, she's a Bond girl, she's lovely. She was in the Avengers, she's just been around forever. And she's still out there right now. I mean, geez, she's in Game of Thrones, for Pete's sake.
Oh my goodness. Is she ever? She is fantastic in Game of Thrones. You're not watching this season.
I haven't started. I need to start watching it. Absolutely.
Wait, you haven't watched any of it?
I haven't watched any of it. Don't hate me. Don't hate me.
She's so good. It's such a soap opera. Okay, so Diana Rigg, she's perfect, and although in this film, I think understated. She's. I needed more. I needed more of her.
She's a former acid head hippie sort of type. So
and a nurse.
Yeah. And then little bit parts of people like Catherine Hellmond, which was fun to see her in an early role.
You know why I love seeing Catherine Hellmond is because I get to say things like, "Oh, Catherine Hellmond from Benson with Robert Guillaume and Renee Auberjonois." That's I've been looking forward to that for a day.
I think of her in three things. 1, Brazil, my all-time favorite film. 2, Time Bandits, which she's also genius in. And 3, Who's the Boss?
That's right. She was mom.
She'll perpetually be in my head with those.
What was her name? Stockard Channing.
Stockard Channing appears in one brief little scene. I thought that was quite a little thing. I'm like, oh look, it's Stockard. That was fun to see her pop up. Frances Sternhagen is always great as the cantankerous sort of secretary type of person. And man, is she in this film?
Oh, she's absolutely. She's fantastic.
She is great. She is just so great. Gosh, she is still acting. She is still keeping busy at, how old is she? She was born in 1930. So she is a busy, busy lady.
Wow. Let's see who else stood out. We already mentioned Paddy Chayefsky as the opening narrator. It was fun hearing his voice. So many. I mean, the list of uncredited, folks in here. Christopher Guest is an uncredited resident. It was fun seeing him plodding around. Oh my goodness. The list goes on and on. Anyhow, a fantastic cast. I think the length of the list gets back to that earlier point of just the busyness that they were able to capture in this hospital. And I think ER on its best days. You remember ER used to do these fantastic live events. They would do these season premieres, or finales. They would do them live, like single camera live shots, and you'd get very much. You'd absolutely see the genesis of how they of their set design when you look at the hospital. Like you see kind of how they move the camera in and out of this craziness. It was great.
Yeah, Arthur Hiller directed it. He's a guy who has been directing just forever. And he was also president of the Academy for a while, and so I think he would pop out at the Oscars every now and then. But yeah, he's been directing since the 50s. A lot of big films that you don't think of as directors' films really, but things like Love Story, The Out of Towners. You've got The In-Laws, the original we're talking about for those last two, The Lonely Guy, Outrageous Fortune, Silver Streak, See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Taking Care of Business, The Babe, And of course, he ended up directing a film that ended up, he pulled his name from it and it became an Alan Smithee film. And that film was an Alan Smithee film, Burn Hollywood Burn.
Mm.
So he himself has chosen to pull the old Alan Smithee moniker for something. But you
didn't mention author. I think that's one of the ones that I like and nobody else likes.
I have never seen that, so I can't.
That's good. Yeah. He's done a lot of stuff, and that's why this was kind of a tough. It's tough to assign. Like I'm looking at this movie, and I look at the things that sort of fall apart for me, and I don't know where to put it.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is a film, though. I mean, reading about this, it seemed like as the writer, Paddy Chayefsky had a lot of pull. Like he was really working with the producer on this, and I'm forgetting his name, but what is his name? He produced Network with them, Howard Gottfried. They produced this together. And Paddy Chayefsky essentially was an uncredited producer on this. I mean, he was helping pick the cast. He was helping pick the director. They actually had somebody else on directing the film, and Paddy Chayefsky just really, really didn't like him at all and thought he was just doing a terrible job and kicked him off. And then he brought on Arthur Hiller, who he had worked on before, with I want to say it was the Americanization of Emily, I believe. So it was Michael Ritchie is who they had already hired with. But Paddy Chayefsky, this truly is a film where it's the writer who is really kind of controlling everything and really the one who's behind everything, even though he came up at one point and gave George C. Scott a note, and George C. Scott just laid into him and said, "Look, you stick to your bleep bleep writing. I'll do the acting." So it's like he's one of those guys who, he really, and you could tell even in Network, he really is a writer who needs to be involved with everything because they're his words.
Yeah.
He came from the world of playwriting where the writer is king, and he still had that respect when he came to film.
Well, and it was fascinating that he was able to keep that respect when so many other writers have given it up.
Yeah, right. Arthur Hiller actually commented to the author of a Paddy Chayefsky biography. Arthur Hiller said, "People often say to me, 'You've done 2 pictures with Paddy. How did you get through it?' My answer always is, when a genius speaks, I listen. He's really the only genius I ever worked with. He was way above the rest of us."
Wow.
So,
well, that's kind.
That is very kind. That is very kind. And I think it also goes to show that Paddy Chayefsky, some people felt a little difficult to have on set. He was he was very particular with his words and how they were treated.
Well,
rightfully so.
Rightfully so, and the work speaks to it. And I still go back to your characterization of this film. For me, it all boils down to a training ground for the great. I after watching Network last week, I came into this film expecting and deeply wanting that same sort of reaction.
Right.
And what I got were, as I've felt like this with a number of films we've talked about, such great components in this film, and there's so many different elements and characters that I really like, and when they're put all together, it just doesn't resonate for me as well. So,
and it's funny because for me, you can really tell when it's all changing when all of a sudden you hear that little musical sting.
Right.
The little ding is like the little horror sting. Just like, oh, here we go down this road.
Well, yeah, and that's an important thing to talk about because this movie is stark when it comes to music and you don't get the music. What you get a lot of is room sound and surgery sound and clinking of tables and lots of voices, and it's just a mud of these great environmental audio. And so when you get those little stingers and music beds, it's distracting, or it's not distracting but jarring.
It's jarring. It comes out of nowhere. Kind of that's where it shifts from the satire to all of a sudden, oh, now we're getting into the plot.
Yes.
Now we're really plotting.
Yes.
The film out, and it just felt like, okay, here we go.
That's exactly it. Did you find any numbers on this one?
I couldn't find any numbers other than how much it made. I couldn't find anything that said how much it cost, but it made $14 million, and in the context, I think it did pretty well for itself. I mean, it got some Oscar nominations. It did win an Oscar for Paddy Chayefsky, as we said, but it wasn't Rocky. It wasn't Network. It did well enough for itself, but not like knocking the crowds down.
Well, that feels about right.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm done with this movie.
Yeah, I think we hit it all.
All right, let's do the let's flick chart it.
All righty.
Let's keep climbing toward that big golden 100.
Here, here. And people can find us over at flickchart.com/thenextreel. All right.
People should do that.
They should. The Hospital or Sandlot?
Sandlot.
Totally. The Hospital or The Parallax View?
Parallax View.
The Hospital or Bull Durham? Oh, come on. It's totally Bull Durham.
You do this one.
It's totally
yeah,
Bull
okay.
Durham.
It's Bull Durham. It's Bull Durham.
I know you just didn't want to say it. The Hospital or 42? Of course, the poster that they have up for 42 doesn't have anything to do with baseball. It's Jackie Robinson sitting on a bus with his lovely wife. And just seeing those two together, I'm like, gosh, they were a great pair. I really enjoyed watching them.
42.
Yeah.
All right.
The Hospital or Strange Days? It's totally The Hospital.
Totally The Hospital. We have a winner. The
Hospital or The Fifth Element? I am totally going with The Hospital.
I'm gonna give it to you. Only because it's late and I'm weak.
That's right. I finally caught you off guard.
Too weak to fight.
The Hospital or Alien Resurrection? Oh, come on.
I would put on Alien Resurrection first.
You would? Really?
Yeah.
You would put on Alien Resurrection before the first 70 minutes of The Hospital?
I'll give it to you because you know what? It's funny. This is not a movie that I need to see a bunch more times.
Yeah. No, you're right. This is a movie though that I would find myself coming back to just to hear some good writing.
Yeah. Okay.
Like if I wanted to hear like some great character repartee, if I wanted to look at some satire and really kind of tune into that, I would go to this film. Alien Resurrection, there's no reason. I mean, I will watch Alien Resurrection likely more than I would watch The Hospital. It shames me to say that. It's such a terrible film, but it's a part of a series, and for that I end up feeling more obligated to it, which is terrible.
All right, I'm gonna give you The Hospital because I feel like I will. There's a context in which I will watch it again, and that is about the overall dialogue of healthcare films, because there are films that have important things to say about the cultural condition of healthcare, and I like it in that respect a lot.
Yeah. All right. We're at number 83 out of 87.
Okay, just give me the list of 84 through 87.
Alien Resurrection, The Fifth Element, Strange Days, and Rush.
I just needed to hear them all in a row. They didn't actually rank it against Rush. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we better. Yeah, I think Flickchart just knows. We won't bother them with Rush again.
Next week, we're doing our final Paddy Chayefsky film. We're doing Marty from 1950 something, 55, and that's another one that was inspired by a real life experience from Chayefsky. It's going to be another one, interesting one to talk about with Ernest Borgnine. Borgnine.
Absolutely.
You know what I like about Ernest Borgnine? Because his last name sounds like something you do to a steak. Do you know what I mean? Like, how would you like that cooked sore? I'd like that Borgnine.
I'd like a Borgnine.
Medium Borgnine. It's a beef Borgnine.
Thought of that, but sure.
And now you're going to say it. You're going to go into Roots Chris, and you're going to say, I'd like a beef Borgnine. Go ahead, say that a few more times after
yeah.
we're finished, and it won't mean anything to you anymore. You'll
That's
never
right.
be able to say it right.
I won't. I'm going to really have to think about that. Whew.
Anything hot that we're going to see between now and our next experience together?
Well, we've got The Great Gatsby coming out this weekend.
That's this weekend, and then we have next weekend is Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just wanted everybody to be ready.
Yeah, that's right. Pete's ready.
I'm ready. I'm so ready.
Pete is building his own time machine right now so he can beam himself forward in time.
Not come fast enough.
That's right.
I want to see this movie so badly.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You know what we got? I want to shout out to Sarmento for the recommendation of Gravity.
The trailer,
Man, that looks horrifying. I think we're in for that one in October.
It's the whole idea of that just
nauseating.
it's like taking, what was that Open Water film? Open Water.
Yeah, Open Water.
It's like that without the sharks, but in space. It's like, what's worse? I don't know. Either one is pretty much absolutely sucks in every way.
In every way.
Yeah, every possible way.
Yeah, Gravity is funny because it's like a fear that I've had in the back of my head all my life that I've never actually seen, like, on display.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That fear of floating off into space like that, and just where the whole movie is about that.
I know.
Oh.
I'm curious to see how Alfonso Cuarón makes that run the full length of the film. I'm very curious to see. I mean, it's completely doable. I want to see him do it.
It would be interesting. Unfortunately, it's only a 7-minute movie. I don't know if you heard that. It's 7 minutes of terror.
So the trailer was really
the trailer was 2.5
part
minutes.
One. Yeah.
All right, that's all I got.
Yeah, me too.
All right,
and I'm spent.
We wanted to take a moment to thank you for your continued support over the years. It's hard to believe that we have been having weekly, in-depth discussions about movies since 2011.
That's right, 12 years and counting. Producing this show is a labor of love for us, but it does require a lot of time and effort each week.
If you enjoy our podcast and would love to help keep it going, there are some easy ways you can show your support. One is by using our Originals page to shop for the original source material that movies we've discussed were based on.
That's right. In Season 1 alone, we covered 13 films adapted from books or plays, from Charlie Kaufman's adaptation to David Fincher adaptations like Fight Club.
In Season 2, we covered even more, like Powell and Pressburger's The Red Shoes and The African Queen from our series about legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff.
We can't forget about the 4 Jason Bourne movies we talked about. Love those movies. Well, the original trilogy, at least.
For our Richard D. Zanuck series, we did Jaws, Rush, Big Fish, and more. And for our horror series, we talked about John Carpenter's The Thing, which was adapted from Who Goes There?
We did our first great car chase series with movies like Bullet, The French Connection, and Drive. And for the holidays, we did Preston Sturgis's Christmas in July.
We had a great John Huston series with adaptations like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
And for our baseball series, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Have I told you lately how much I love that movie?
Yeah, I think you have. Plus, our Magician series and Heist film series had adaptations as well.
Tons of page-to-screen gems. Listeners can find the details and links to the original material at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play, or movie you buy through our links helps support the show, and it's no extra cost to you.
So dive in and get your next read today. thenextreel.com/originals has all the films adapted from other sources that not only we have covered, but all of the shows on the Next Reel family of podcasts. Check it out and get reading.
Support the show and build your reading list. It's a win-win. Head to thenextreel.com/originals.